How can there possibly be so many prisoners released in error, either wrongly discharged from a prison or a court where they should have remained in custody, which is where the prisoner has not deliberately played any part in the error, so they haven't tried to escape, they haven't tried to con the system, and yet, take a look at this. The spike on the right-hand side is the number of prisoners who've been released in error under Labour's watch. Now, if you caught my Black Belt Secrets video yesterday, I talked about David Lammy's refusal to answer questions about whether or not there's been any more asylum seekers who've been accidentally released from prison since Kibatu. Spoiler, he did know but wouldn't say, and afterwards defended that position and said it's because he didn't have all of the details, so repeatedly refused to answer the question, which is infuriating to say the least. Not to mention he's standing up and aggressively shouting across the Commons in the most unprofessional manner that I've seen in Parliament. Now, back to the point here. How can there be, let's think about this for a moment, how can there possibly be so many releases in error? This is just staggering. Now, I make this video because I want to talk about the state of things in the UK. Now, in some respects, crime levels have stayed the same. In some respects, they've decreased. But in some, they seem to be getting worse. And just to interject, as it's relevant for the video here, Master Black Belt members and higher, not the trainee Black Belt or the Black Belt, but Master Black Belt members and higher are eligible for a free Farb Gel spray. No purchase required, you just have to be a member, or indeed a member of my website, BlackBeltBarrister.com. I have a box of these to send out to eligible members. There's a form that I'll link below. I can't respond to all of the incomplete forms or incorrect forms because there'll be hundreds of them. There have been hundreds of them, but the eligible ones, I am sending these out. The first batches have gone out already. Lots of people have received these. They are a legal spray in so much as it's never been ruled illegal. It is not designed as a weapon. It's not designed to harm anybody. It is an identifier. It sprays out a red dye that will identify a prospective or alleged attacker so that you can identify them to the police. So if you're a Master Black Belt member of the channel or you become one, you'll be eligible for one of these. Fill out the form so I get your address. There's no easier way to do that on YouTube other than you become a member, fill in my form, give me your address, and I'll send you one of these out. So it's just my way of helping people to protect themselves. I know it's not a weapon. It will just identify any attacker. So just to let you know about that. So the statistics that I'm concerned about here, along with the headlines, which I'll show you in a minute, with unprovoked attacks, which are really alarming and concerning, to do with knife-enabled crime recorded by the police. Now, they will say here that it decreased in the last year, but that decrease is that little bit on the right-hand side you can see here. Yes, it decreased in the last year, but only to levels after it rocketed up since 2012 or so. And all of these kind of offences here, it's too small for you to read, I'll read it out. They are assault with injury and assault with intent to cause serious harm. Robbery, which is theft with the use or the threat of force, so give me your whatever or I will hurt you, that becomes a robbery, or actual use of force, of course. Threats to kill, and other selected offences which come along with this type of offending. Now, you'll notice alarmingly as well the threats to kill, which is a relatively serious thing. You know, do this or I will kill you is a fairly serious threat to make. Now, all of these things are increasing since 2012 or so. Yes, they dropped. You can see that there's a big drop in the middle. That's not due to any sort of, government action or whatever. That was COVID right in the middle. We had lockdown there. So obviously, people are not being robbed if they're at home. So with so many people being at home, working from home and so on, those figures plummeted still to only around 15,000 or so. So that's still quite a lot. Now, I come back to say, how can this possibly be error? And this is all the more concerning when you look at the overall prison population and what people are in prison for. And horrendously, the top two, by a long shot, are violence against the person and sexual offences, followed by robbery, which arguably is violence or the threat of violence against the person in order to steal something from somebody. And then just below that, theft. So, people thinking that, drugs is the main kind of offending, it isn't. It's not even half those of violence against the person. That's based on the prison population. And so when we look at the actual statistics of cases going through court, it gets even more staggering. I'll come back to those in a minute, but first coming to a headline, because I have conversations on a near daily basis. People ask me, with my background in martial arts, yes, I'm a 7th Dan black belt. It's not just a play on words in the name of the channel here. But being a black belt and a barrister, people often ask me, what can they do to defend themselves? And, what should they be looking out for, both for safety and legally? And genuinely, I tell people that the safest thing you can do is stay away from dangerous places. Don't go out late at night to certain areas that are known to be unsafe. Don't go out by yourself. Always be vigilant when you're looking around, because we have horrendous stories like this one here, where there's another story of an unprovoked attack in Birmingham last night, where a woman in her 30s is now taken to hospital with a serious neck injury. She remains in critical condition because they've arrested a man in his 20s, and they believe that this was an unprovoked attack, and they are working to understand why it happened. They've got more officers in the area today. They're going to continue to investigate and provide reassurance and so on. And they have kept in force the Section 60 powers across Birmingham, which I'm starting to think now. Many people will disagree with me and shoot me down. I don't care. I see the statistics here, and I think that it's somewhat necessary. I think in certain areas, there should be, almost at the drop of a hat, or as a standard, police should be able to stop and search and check that people do not have weapons on them in these kind of places, because that is by far the biggest deterrent, I think, because if people are found with weapons on them, they are immediately arrested and should be charged, should go to prison. Not that that's always the case, but the Section 60 remains in force in Birmingham today, doubtless because ongoing from the last few days, they've made lots of arrests for fireworks and all sorts of different things. And, of course, this poor woman being stabbed in the neck by this man in an unprovoked attack. And so, as I say, the best thing you can do is stay away from these dangerous areas. And also, one thing that the military is taught is to work out, monitor, and get used to looking at what we call the baseline of an area. And this is, what is the norm? If everything is safe and everything is moving along normally, what is the sort of standard level of normality in that area? Picture for me a coffee shop, for example. If you walk into a coffee shop, what would you expect to see? You would expect to see people sitting down, chatting over coffee. You'd expect to see a line of people queuing up ready to order their drinks and snacks. You would expect to see another area where they are waiting to be served what they've already ordered, and so they are hanging around there. There might be somebody waiting for the bathroom at the back. That's usually at the back. Someone coming in or out of the bathroom at the back, and a few other people milling around looking for tables, and probably that's about it. You might see one or two people around the front deciding whether or not they're coming in or not. And I'm labouring the point here, but that's what you would generally expect to see. If you see somebody walk in, and let's say you're sitting down, and you've observed all of that, and that is the baseline, you see somebody walk in, and they're looking around, they're not looking at the counter, they don't join the queue, they're not looking for somebody, they are perhaps wandering around and examining something else, or they just don't look like they fit in. That person has broken the baseline. And so you can apply this analysis to anywhere you go, whether you're in the city centre, in a shop, in a cafe, whatever. If you become that little bit more vigilant, you will start to realise that every area, every shop, etc., has a baseline of what is normal for that area. And if you see somebody breaking that baseline, you should be a little bit more alert to what's going on, and that will help to keep you safe. That on top of don't go to certain places at night by yourself and so on. So I just thought I would interject that into this video because a few people have asked me about that now. But then we come back to the statistics, and some people tell me crime is falling, but that depends on the time scale that you're looking at. Because if we look at this chart here from 2012, crime is not falling. Police recorded crime in England and Wales is up from around about 4 million to 6.6 million for the year 24 to 25. So it depends on the timescale you're looking at. It's like a lot of people dispute the whole climate change thing because they say if you go back far enough, actually this is a blip rather than a trend. But, you know, recent data might suggest otherwise, and that's the ongoing debate. But by the by, more about that in another video. I'm not going to get drawn down that rabbit hole in this one. But if we look at this, these are fairly staggering statistics, because if we look at the cost, they're always talking about, you know, tens of billions of cost here and there. If we look at the estimated cost for crime in England and Wales, the closest report we have here is around £60 billion, but that was from 2015. And if we look back to 2015, it's, like I say, a couple of million fewer than it is now. So that cost is likely to be higher. If we look at the prison population, this is more recent from June 25, 87,000, and this puts the spaces available at very, very few indeed, which is why many people say that we should be deporting foreign criminals who were not supposed to be here in the first place, or who arguably have forfeited their right to be here and therefore should be removed. And then we look at Crown Court disposals, the number of cases where all offences have been completed in the Crown Court. Those for the year of 2024, 113,000 cases were dealt with in the Crown Courts in that year alone. But then we come to the open caseload, which I think is a little bit more than this now. Yes, in the 3 months to June 25, there were 78,000 open cases in the Crown Court alone. We do not have 78,000 spaces in the prison system. So when they tell you there's a prison crisis, this is why. We do not have 78,000 spaces in the prison system. And yet we have 78,000 cases, and this is just in the Crown Court alone. Wait till I tell you about the Magistrates' Court. Bearing in mind the Magistrates' Court can obviously still send you to prison. They have limited powers compared to the Crown Court, but have a guess. Let me know in the comments. How many cases do you think in any given period are disposed of in the Magistrates' Court? Let's take a look at some of the statistics here. From January to December 2024, there were 1.4 million cases that went through to completion after a validation process in the Magistrates' Court. And in the 3 months to June 2025, there were 354,000 cases dealt with in the Magistrates' Courts. Now, obviously, a lot of those will be fines and rehabilitation orders, community service, and all these kind of things. Firstly, because they will be less serious offences, which is why they remained in the Magistrates' Court, but also because they must be logically leaning on not going to prison. Logically, because there must be some political leaning on them. I'm not saying that they are biased, of course, but you'd be forgiven for thinking that they'll be biased not sending people to prison because we don't have the spaces. Bearing in mind, as I said, in the 3 months to June 2025, there were 78,329 open cases in the Crown Court. And if that's not bad enough, we have Labour ministers trying to gloat that there's been 0 boat crossings and 0 migrant arrivals, illegal migrant arrivals in the last week or so. Well, some people argue that that was just due to bad weather, and it seems that they were right, because in the last couple of days alone, we've had over 1,200 illegal migrants arrive in the UK, most of whom, I dare say, will probably end up staying here, because according to recent leaks from the Home Office, they say that if they come from a certain country, Afghanistan and certain places, that they are almost certainly guaranteed to be granted asylum here and will stay here. But bearing in mind, with the caveat that some people genuinely need help because they come from a war-torn country and they need our help and so on. But apart from that, the vast majority of these people, we know absolutely nothing about where they're from, absolutely nothing about their background, their history, what sort of personality they are. They haven't been through any kind of checks at all. And in most cases, I dare say, we probably know absolutely zero about them whatsoever. And yet lots of people will say that we shouldn't be criticising the fact that these people come here and that we should be welcoming them here. And frankly, however you feel about being compassionate about other people, I think that this is frankly illogical. To have, in the last couple of days alone, over 1,269 people arrive here illegally, about whom we know absolutely nothing, many of whom have been shown to be statistically more likely to offend in sort of serious offences against the person, which is going to add to the growing list and the growing prison population. This really is a dangerous time to be in. So can I please urge everybody not to be going out, especially if you're young, especially if you're vulnerable, late at night, to places you're not familiar with, to places that have been shown to be dangerous and so on. That is really the only way that we're going to be able to curb these kind of attacks. So please do listen to the word of warning here. These stories from the police here are quite horrific. It could be anybody. I mean, we avoid going to certain places now for this reason, because this could be anybody. It was an unprovoked attack. and they are on the increase. So please do heed the guidance. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And as always, thank you for watching.